Okay, folks, I know I said last time when I was working on it that the next step that I would stop at would be step A6, which was putting the transmission housing together. Kind of got a little ahead of myself and a little crazy, and went ahead and did the entire motor, transmission, and put the diff cup on the front, and built the MIP for the rear. Installed my full-size servo, shift linkage. Once before I even put the cage and everything on, I will power up all the electronics, and I'll mess with the endpoints on these so that my shift servo doesn't burn up. But I did take a picture of the inside gears before I buttoned up the case on it. So as I dig through my phone here, there we go, that's what I wanted to see. Oh, shut up, stupid phone. Just show me the freaking picture. Alright. Right there is a picture of the steel internals. Now, the steel internals are the option versus the stock. And we have our shift fork here, obviously, because there's the rod there. It's a dual lower outdrive, dual center idler, and dual top shaft, all with bearings. Very, very, very beefy construction. And after looking at it and remembering all the issues that the original twin hammers had with the servos burning up, I don't think I'm a rocket scientist, but I don't think I need to be one to figure it out. But if you guys look right there, see where the shift arm goes onto that slider? If you don't grease the piss out of that rod right there, it causes that shift arm to bind, or the shift fork rather, to bind up on the arm as it's sliding back and forth. So I put a ton of the black grease on there to hopefully keep that from going. But now that I've got the whole transmission and all that setup done, we move on to doing the rear suspension assembly, which means I'm actually finally getting out of bag A. So all these extra parts that are sitting up here that came from bag A are going to go back into one of these baggies here. So I have all my A parts in one bag, B parts in another bag, C, D, and so on. Now, what I thought was pretty cool, and I'm going to show you guys this, is there was a part. Make sure I got everything out of there. Yep, very good. This little spacer here, right here, this is an option piece where if you don't want to put a servo on it and have a 2-speed transmission, you can either stick it in front of the spacer on the shifter to lock it in high gear, or you can stick it behind it to lock it in low gear, which would, like I just said, lock it into either high or low only. But since this is the torque hammer and I'm going to need both of them, since I am running the Holmes Hobbies motor on here, 45 turn, I had to go with a rather large pinion on it. And the gear mesh, it was a little unclear on not setting the gear mesh rather, but locking the motor down. It's almost like an EXO. You have an outer bolt here that runs down into the plastic housing, which is the very first step you put a nut in there. And then there's a secondary bolt, which I don't know if my camera can focus on it, but right there, that screws down into the motor plate, which slides back and forth and allows you to line up your mesh. It didn't say anywhere in the instructions about putting a screw in that hole and using that to tighten down. But after looking at it for about 10 minutes, I finally realized that that's what that was for. Now, we've got that whole assembly together there. Brought the steering servo up just for mock-up. I'm going to be using a Savix SC1268 SG. Tried and true servo right here. That was actually the shift servo on tap out when I was running it. But that pretty much there gets the gist of that. The whole transmission and drive shaft assembly, shifter assembly is all done. So that'll wrap up part 1. And part 2, we're going to be moving into the actual chassis assembly where we're putting the shock towers, the steering servo, the motor and all that in there. That'll be a whole nother monster on its own. So yeah, the time at speed controller, all that, mounting everything in there, moving through everything, getting the rear battery tray. So that pretty much wraps up part 1. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and make sure to stay tuned for part 2.